person, so either ask a question just for the person who's in line, or ask one for everyone. We don't want like one or two people looking at you, Brad and MovieBob, to dominate everything. Okay? Okay, so starting over with Bob. Any questions for Bob? Oh yes. I don't do these. Yeah. Okay, good on the line.
My name is Bob Chittenden, aka MovieBob, and I'm here because they saw me in the hall and said you should do this.
I'm Nash. I used to do Doctor Who reviews, now I do fantasy movies and people doing stupid things. Mostly before. You're welcome. Dude, you can move.
Do you deny it?
It's your choice.
My name's Brad. I played Bayless on that guy with the glasses.
I'm Rantasmo. I do a show called Needs More Gay.
I'm Hagan. I review stuff that Brad hasn't got to yet. Either every Doctor Who that Nash doesn't want to. I have no identity.
I'm Leo. I host That Sci-Fi Guy. I review science fiction. I also host the League of Inebriated Gentlemen, where I review beers.
Leon Thomas. I host Renegade Cut for Channel Awesome and Darkness.
I'm Kyle Calgren. My throat's a bit sore, so forgive me. I host a show called Browse Held High on That Guy with Glasses and ShayApocalypse.com.
And I'm Matthew Buck, aka FilmBrain, and I literally arrived here 40 minutes ago.
Okay, so any questions for MovieBob at the end?
At the end?
Not right now. No, at the end.
I know your favorite movie is RoboCop. What are your thoughts on the new one, both as a remake and as its own movie?
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but it looks terrible, and I'd rather not think about it until I have to actually work on it. I had something more interesting, but it just looks like shit. Up the back.
I have a question for the panel as a whole. Actually, out of all the movies you get as a constant request, what one do you not review because it's out of your wheelhouse?
Doctor Who. Come back to me, I have to think about it.
There was one that I started watching and I got 20 minutes into it and realized that it was literally nothing but two people having sex in front of a Nazi flag. I can't really do anything from this, so I just skipped it.
I'll literally review any movie I feel like. It could be any genre, and I also would be interested in finding out what that film was.
Anything straight.
People ask me to review things that aren't sci-fi. Yeah, so I got nothing.
People frequently ask me to do Blade Runner, but frankly, I'm not sure at this point what more I can say that hasn't been said before, and I'm worried about being redundant. And that's the only reason why I don't do that one, even though it's one of my favorite films.
For me, whenever I pick a movie to review, it's usually because I find something in it that I can hook onto and create a whole essay on it, like 5 pages about it. Other than that, I don't think I can think of any one title that was perhaps suggested to me. I did get one request for Inception, though. Which apparently is an art house film.
Funny enough, I got Inception as well at one point. Like, I would review anything I feel like I'll have enough material from, but I'll get the odd weird request. Like, I remember one time, this was before the remake came out, someone asked, can you review Evil Dead? It's terrible. What? Damn. Like, go to my subforum and look at my request thread, and someone did post that. I swear, it's right there. Along with Inception.
Actually, I just got Star Wars Episode 1, people asked me to review. The Red Letter Media has covered it thoroughly.
I remembered, the whole premise of what I do is pretty much looking back at why we never had a fantasy blockbuster up until Lord of the Rings. And people keep asking me to do Harry Potter. I'm like, the basic thesis here, you're not...
So when will you do Harry Potter?
You want to be hit today.
Okay, so anything for Nash?
Will there be a special MAGFest edition of, what the fuck is wrong with you?
No, I hope not.
Of course, it's already snowing, and people are going to go get drunk after this, so I'm anticipating.
All of us are drunk right now.
I'm anticipating the grand drunken snowball massacre.
Nice.
You got this?
All right, this question's for everybody. An evil wizard tells you that you may only live in a world without Disney or a world without Nintendo. Which world do you choose?
World without Disney.
Whoa. Special guest panelist.
I have a logic question on that. Without Disney, the company, even do the people who worked there still exist?
No.
Disney.
I really don't care that much about either.
I'm good either way.
I need my drunk Nintendo nights, so I guess a world without Disney.
I'd probably go for the world without Nintendo, simply because Disney owns absolutely everything else in the world.
Without Nintendo, I guess.
Disney bought Star Wars, so no.
I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I actually echoed that. I need my Star Wars.
Actually, can I do without Star Wars? I love Star Wars. I grew up with it, but now I realize that it kind of solidified how we make movies now. We are living in the house that Spielberg and Lucas built. I kind of want to see what the world would have been like without it. If, like, the Scorseses and the Coppolas kept, like, experimenting through into the 80s. So, without Disney, I guess.
See, here I am at the end, and I'm thinking, if I said a world without Nintendo, would that be massively unpopular at a video game convention? Already. Okay, world without Nintendo. Let's do this.
Oh, right here.
Hey, I'm sure you guys have gotten a lot of weird fan backlash that you disagree with, or fans who, give you negative feedback on a review or disagree. But what was the fan backlash or negative feedback that stuck with you the most? Whether it was because you disagreed with their opinion or because they disagreed with the process.
Just for me or for everybody?
Open question for everyone.
I have one thing. I have an interesting answer for that. This month, me and Rap Critic last month we did 4 videos on the Insane Clown Posse, 2 movie reviews and 2 album reviews.
Oh no!
Yes. I had no idea they were so into their band. We had people claiming that both of us were deliberately trying to troll their fan base. Other ones were saying we failed at the review because because we were obviously trying to troll them, but then we didn't reveal it was all a trick for some reason, and mirroring with what happened in their fucking Wraith album. They seemed to think we were doing some sort of performance art. And, you know, not even the fucking David Tennant fans get this crazy.
Are you surprised by the lack of logic amongst juggalos?
That does seem a bit silly, yeah.
Basically, anytime I say anything political or about religion, I duck for cover like it's the end of the world.
You see, I reviewed several religious movies, and the Juggalo thing completely blew out the water.
I still get hate mail because of a negative review of Man of Steel. How many times can I say get over it?
It's not a good movie. I've, over the time doing this, it's only, it's not that I dislike the fans, because they're why I'm here, and it's great. But there's just a certain level you just have to start filtering out, because it's either so much, or it's comment threads in general have started doing this. I posted a while back about how Popular Science got rid of comment threads on their website entirely. They did away with them because they just felt like they were redundant and they were dragging the original argument down. And it really, I'm not happy with that aspect of Web 2.0 because instead of it actually being about what's being presented to the audience, it's the audience stepping up and using it as, you know, kind of a platform of Me Too, class clown kind of stuff, and it ends up being the signal to noise ratio just gets distorted. You get more noise than you do anything useful out of it. Just to sift through it all, it takes too much out of you.
I'm kind of surprised I don't get more of these, but I once did a YouTube comment that was to the effect of, "You need Jesus because you're dangerously deviant and stay out of sin." And I didn't respond to it, but in my head I was like, why is this person watching a review of Dante's Code? Which is a gay porn series about wizards that are naked all the time.
I have to. Do you want to go with that?
I did a crossover with Mars Girl on Friday. And we wrote the script very fast, and I made a science fact error that I didn't fact check because it was literally written overnight. We filmed it the next morning, and yeah, I caught a lot of flack for that one. So I always double check all of my facts now, even if crunch time.
I can't tell my story because police ended up getting involved.
You win.
Correction, Fruitvale Station took place in Oakland, not San Francisco. This happened like a couple weeks ago, so it's still fresh in my mind. I said that Fruitvale Station took place in San Francisco. Everyone in the world said it took place in Oakland. I didn't know there was a difference.
It's not like we don't feel bad. Yeah. We care about what we do.
I've got to say the Equilibrium review, obviously. I mean, when we were making that, it was like the third thing that I had actually properly done for the website, the proper review format that I'm kind of known for, so it was really kind of shaky, and it was still kind of getting its teeth in. I had no idea we got the immense backlash that it did, just like, whoa. But I learned lessons from that review. The tack in that review, I sort of went in the wrong direction, where I kind of went after the fans a little bit. I was like, why is there a fan site about this? And that's kind of really the wrong approach. See, I've kind of distilled it to, you can say what you like about the movie, but keep it about the movie. Don't go off topic, don't go about the people too much, don't go about the people behind the scenes too much, and for goodness sake, don't attack the fans of the movie. That just makes you look like a dick.
One for Brad?
Yeah.
Great question.
One of the aspects I've found about internet movie reviewing is that if you have fun, like watching a movie and actually mocking it, then perhaps you can get good material out of making the review. And usually the guys watching the review will have fun watching it. But is there a review that you're the most satisfied with, and you really think a lot of people really enjoy as well? And this is for all of you.
Probably like Caligula or Cannibal Holocaust, stuff like that. I Spit on Your Grave, being able to make like a 20-minute comedy sketch out of the first 20 minutes of that movie is challenging. The stuff that I get to play around with and kind of do some sketch work with, I usually tend to be pretty satisfied with.
My one, I'd say probably my sextet review. I found over there, good. A lot of stuff worked in that, and I'm usually very critical of my own stuff, and that one sort of sucked the least.
I was always pretty proud of my Robot Jocks review. But on top of that, I did Zombie Apocalypse 2012, and me and my team shot some parody scenes basically to go in the middle of it, and a lot of people actually thought those were scenes from the movie. I was proud of that.
I don't really mock movies in my show. I pick movies that I really like or concepts of film that I really like. Although I think some people thought I was joking in the Willy Wonka review. But
were you claiming that he was Satan, right? Were you claiming that Willy Wonka was Satan?
Well,
Not again.
But yeah, I'm in terms of being proud of my work, it sort of varies from episode to episode. Sometimes when I upload, I'm like, this is going to be great. And sometimes when I upload something, I was like, this is shit. And I worry about it. So it kind of varies with me.
Well, lately I've been in a really perfectionist mood, which is why I've been releasing stuff that's like 30, 40 minutes long, which I should never do. It's just way too much work for me. But I think that the last one, the Cloud Atlas one, went well. But some of the older stuff, I think what I did with the Serbian film, I'm quite proud of. Because I knew it was like mimetically terrible. It was an automatic punchline in and of itself, and I actually learned a lot in making that thing. I learned a lot about Serbia that I never thought I'd. And I think that's caused me to go in a different direction, because before I was just taking these films to find jokes in them, and then I realized that I got a lot out of them, not only for myself but also my audience, out of just trying to give the movie a fair shake and do some actual research into it. And plus, I think the end joke was a lot of fun. My dad actually works for NATO. So having the ending where I call NATO to bomb Serbia, I don't know if my dad showed that to his colleagues, but I kind of cope with it. I don't know. I
I'm quite proud of the Seagal month reviews that I did. Ironically, the increasing laziness of Steven Seagal, just counting the voice doubles and the body doubles, it just got to farcical levels. One of the bits, I was just editing the review, and I was like, hang on, that shot looks really stretched. They just stretched the shot to try and make Seagal look thinner. Really good. But I was quite proud of that. I'm actually I would say that I'm most proud of my crossovers, actually, because I really enjoy doing the collaborations. I like working with another person. I tend to work better. I would agree with people that tend to say that I work better with other people. I would agree with that. I think when I'm by myself, sometimes I'm not really sure what I can do by myself. But when you're with when you've got a tag team, basically, it means that you can sort of divide the load. And I think I can write crossovers reasonably well, so it shows off the strengths of both myself and the co-collaborators, and so it's a lot of fun. So for example, I really, really, really love the Big Mama's House review.
I don't know that it's one of the more popular ones. I'm happy with how the Lou Ferrigno Hercules came out.
Every April Fool's I do a Needs More Straight. The last one, which was Fight Club, which I'm really proud of, and I got to sing in it. So.
Yeah, you.
After you end up deciding to review like the exploitation movies and like the porno stuff, how did you end up getting into doing that?
How did I want to do like exploitation? Because ever since I was a kid, I've been a big exploitation guy, been a horror guy, so it just worked out for me that the genre that I wanted to do in my particular show is one that I would be watching anyway. These are all movies I'd be watching, well, most of them are movies I'd be watching. So it just kind of worked out for me like that.
Anything for Rantasmo or for the group?
This is for the entire panel. Is there any movie or show you're looking forward to reviewing in the near future?
That we're planning to? Or that we're hoping to?
Planning to or looking forward to?
I'm going to be doing Left Behind 2 and 3 finally.
I'm looking forward to, it's going to be a couple of months, but getting to Highlander, and that's going to cause such a shitstorm.
I'm really looking forward to that show.
I keep pushing this back, but I've resolved to actually do this year. I'm going to do something about movie directs films.
This is actually about a series that I'm planning. Starting on April 23rd, and going through to May 23rd, I'm finally doing Shakespeare Month. I usually do, but each episode is going to cover like a different Shakespeare adaptation. I'm covering a very, very wide range, like from 10 Things I Hate About You to A Midsummer Night's Dream. I don't maybe next year. I'm doing Derek Jarman's kind of stuff.
Well, I know that I'm really looking forward to doing the projector review on Tinkerbell the Pirate Fairy. Yeah. I'm going to do A Good Day to Die Hard. And do a crossover here on Texas Chainsaw 3D. And I'm going to do the Total Recall remake around the time when Robocop comes out. So I'm so looking forward to the projector as well.
I'm doing the Bee Gees Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. Ending World War II. I mean, it was great for me.
Spider-Man 2, Transformers 4.
Yeah!
I'm doing Mean Girls fairly soon, and at some point I'm doing, I want to do something from Mulholland Drive, not sure what yet, but...
Any other ones for Rantasmo?
This is also for the whole panel. Sorry. So if you review a movie based on a book, do you even bother reading the book, or
I decided to skip the novelization of E.T. the porno.
Where can I get that, by the way?
I'll mail it to you.
Pages might be a bit sticky.
Actually, when I did last week's report, that was the entire point of the review was how it translated from book to screen and the whole process of the adaptation. But otherwise, I would say if you're looking at the movie, you're looking at the medium and the way the story is being told, it's its own thing. And unless you're specifically looking at how the adaptation works, then reading the book is kind of well, you can say, well, this happened in the book, and this was like this in the book, but that doesn't matter because this is the movie, it's its own entity, and you have to evaluate it that way.
I want to agree with Nash, but years ago when I did my first Emmanuel review, I actually bought a copy of the novel that was based on, but not to read, just for a visual joke that didn't really work. But I still have it. And it's hilarious.
I don't necessarily read the book, because there's a lot of things that are adapted from books in the sci-fi genre, but a lot of times I will do some research and at least get kind of the clip notes of what was happening, especially if I'm trying to figure out why. If there's something that's just really weird that they just don't explain in the movie, it's like, well, maybe that was explained more in the book.
I try to do about as much research as I can, and if it's a very famous book that got adapted into a famous film, there's probably something worth referencing. But for the most part, I try to look at the film as the film during my reviews.
I absolutely agree. I did read Cloud Atlas for the review of it because I wanted to see just why the movie didn't quite work as well as the book. But usually, again, film is its own medium, and again, usually it's mostly worth looking at the book if you want to see what was lost in the adaptation and what was gained, because they are very different people, so they have to be judged on different criteria.
Yeah, I tend to have to look up what the book, the plot there. I tend to have to look up the book synopsis. Normally after I've seen the movie, I don't like to spoil myself too much before I see the movie, so I'll see the movie as a movie, and then I'll look up a synopsis of the book so I can compare, and normally the most significant differences can be attributed from there. So obviously, I've had to review quite a few things recently based off books for projects like Filth, which is based off an Welsh novel, and How I Live Now. And for Filth, I knew that the book of Filth has sections of it written by a tapeworm inside the main character's gut, which obviously they had to change a little bit for the film, because they had Jim Broadbent with a massive brain. Yeah, and when I looked up How I Live Now, I was like, oh,
a dream you had.
No, it's normal, it's cool.
Just the other day, I was watching a movie where Jim Broadbent cross-dressed and had 3 arms.
What?
Yes. How I Live Now, for example. I was like, well, reading the book synopsis, oh, that's where the incest came from. But funny story, a while back I did Street Fighter, the Legend of Chun-Li. And
bad for you.
I've never played a Street Fighter game ever, but I just put like a week into just reading up a Street Fighter wiki, and just read it from like top to bottom, and then did the review. And no one complained, so I must have done a lot of research.
Reading takes time that I don't have. I kind of wish I had read, when I did the Bret Easton Ellis movies, I had read some of the books, but not all of them. I think it came out a little bit muddled as a result, so I want to. It doesn't always work out that way, because I work on a pretty quick turnaround.
Okay, anything for the group or anything for me? Mr. Guy in the comment. No, you. Besides the little green hair.
So I know you really don't like Rose or the Ninth Doctor. Are there any episodes with them that you like, though?
It's like the Ninth Doctor or 10th Doctor, because it's the 10th Doctor I really hate. The Ninth Doctor I don't really see him as the Doctor, I see him as the guy who wandered in and they mistook for the Doctor. There's a bunch of different episodes with them I do like. Just from the Ninth Doctor one, Dalek in particular, is really, really good. And with Tennant, you've got like Blink, you've got Midnight, you've got Turn Left, there are good episodes in New Who. It's just my New Who videos are dedicated to whining. So I don't really comment on how good some of them are, but I will eventually do a video of 10 episodes of New Who that I don't think are shit.
probably pitch on it. I know there's a debate on practical versus digital effects among movie buffs, and as someone who has dabbled in special effects a little bit and has friends in the industry, I just want to know what you guys think about the whole thing, or how digital effects can be made better, or just any of your thoughts on the topic.
I mean, a lot of people that I do stuff with get really kind of picky about that, like, and that they'll hate like anything that has CGI in it. I'm not. Like, I do prefer practical effects. Yeah, I think that they're better. I like that it has weight to it and it actually looks like a physical object on screen. But I don't hate digital effects either. I think sometimes it can look really well. It's also like practical, and then you have good examples of it. You have bad examples of it. Just the older stuff is. I think it looks better. It's what I grew up with. It just happens to be what I prefer.
Well, since I've been looking back at a lot of the stuff, especially in comparison, I just saw Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug, and I saw how they animated Smaug, and it was really good. But then I stopped and realized how much money went into it. And then I look back at Dragon Slayer, which had a considerably, even adjusted, budget-wise, had a considerably lower budget. And even with that low budget, what they made with practical effects, they actually came up with a new form of stop motion that looked more fluid. It started Dragon Slayer. And with that much less money, it looked comparable to something they spent, what, $100 million on? So that says, I mean, they can look good, but it takes a tremendous amount of time, effort, and money to get digital to equal just what you could do with practical effects.
There's something I've noticed from watching both the Hobbits in 48 frames and 24 frames is that usually digital doesn't look quite as good or weighty as practical. But if you watch them in 48 frames, honestly, digital begins to look more real than the practical. The practical stuff looks more staged and set. It looks like a play, and it doesn't look real. Like the practical effects in people's ears or hands, or whatever, are really noticeable. But the CGI looks really good, and I don't know why that is, but it's something I find fascinating.
Our eyes are stupid.
I think there are pluses and minuses to both. I mean, good digital looks good. Bad practical effects looks like puppets. I think honestly the best is a good marriage of the two. When you're using something physical and you're using digital to enhance it, that's usually what I think ends up looking the best.
Although there's probably some exceptions to this. My rule, at least in my mind, has always been if you can do it effectively through practical effects, then you should. If you can't do it effectively through practical effects, then you try CGI. And my concern is always when I see a movie and it's deeply entrenched in CGI and it just looks awful, I think you could have used a model. You could have used a real animal in this scene instead of a cartoon. And sometimes the CGI looks amazing and it's beautiful, but sometimes it just feel like they made the wrong call.
Good effects look good. Bad effects look bad.
Well,
given the choice on bad effects, I prefer practical, because bad practical is charming at least. Sharknado and Jaws 4 look equally shit. Jaws 4 is charming as hell.
I can't remember the name of the man who made it. Has anyone seen the story of film? A 15-part documentary about... I want to say Mark Cousins. In the last episode, the one about filmmaking in the 21st century, he made a very interesting comparison. He took a very famous shot from the movie Intolerance from 1916, which is it's on a crane flying over a recreation of the city of Babylon, complete with horses and people dancing in the streets, and it looked like a real city. It was tangible. And he set that shot against a flyover scene from Gladiator, taking ancient Rome, recreated entirely on a computer, pointing out that the former was made with real risk. The wire could have snapped, the crane could have stumbled. There was sweat and blood put into this gigantic set, which became a Los Angeles landmark for years after the movie was made. While the opening shot of Gladiator was made by people working late hours, slaving over computers, eating off of pizza that they ordered for the late nights. There is effort that goes into both. I think digital effects are a very powerful tool. They take a lot of risk out of film, but then again, they do take a lot of tangibility. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a good thing. Again, it is a tool. It is how we use it. But then again, I think as we are moving farther and farther into purely digital filmmaking, what we can do, what is less risky to do, will increase exponentially. And we could be seeing some incredibly, I don't say succulent, but shit, I already said it. Succulent images. And I'm very glad that I'm going to be alive to see that, to see what we can do in the image creation process. By the way, go see Gravity.
Like you said, taking risks. That has actually developed so many film techniques. I mean, because Ted took, a camera and slapped it on a piece of a 2x4 and ran it through the woods, they came up with a whole new way of that was it's stupid low-tech stuff. It was crazy. The shoot was a mess, but just the very act of that, they changed film. And I don't think digital does that very. I mean, T2 maybe was the last time that happened. I don't think digital does that very much.
I wouldn't say that. I think there are still limitations to what digital can do, but there are still people with the innovation to overcome those limitations.
I suggest the last time digital really affected filmmaking in that sort of way, I'd suggest probably like the sort of, I don't know which one the film was first, but the Sin City type ones, the one that are entirely green screen, and they try to make the person look as fake as the surroundings, but stylized.
Like the big special effects story this year was all about practical effects, was in Blue is the Warmest Color, which is if you haven't seen this, was the lesbian love story. It's quite explicit, and they got around making what would be pornography, like legally. I'm not making a value judgment. It would legally classify as porn in the United States by using appliances, basically like makeup appliances on that, so that they were not quite doing what it looked like you thought that they were doing, at least allegedly. And that was, like, that's the big, how they do that story this year in movies, and it's about a fairly low-tech effect.
That never makes sense to me. You show a real dick, everybody loses their mind. You show a fake dick, everybody's happy. I don't get it.
The thing with effects is, when they work, they work. Like CGI, for example, really works well in period pieces. For example, in Zodiac, they use CGI extensively to add period details, remove details, and so forth. CGI works well like that. The problem with CGI is that because it's something that you can just have a bunch of animators do, and then they just send it back to you. I get the impression that CGI can be used as a lot of lazy shortcutting, just for practical effects and while some of it is safety and things like that, it's really distracting when I watch a movie and there's CGI fire. CGI fire has never ever looked good.
CGI blood.
Yeah, I was going to say CGI blood. Whenever I see CGI blood, I'm always distracted by it. And I think the reason they've started using CGI blood so extensively is because they're too lazy to shoot a separate tape for TV edits, so they'll just do a version for the TV edit where they'll take the effect out.
There are 5 words that are death. We'll fix it in post.
Yeah. There have been reports of directors literally doing that, like, oh, something's in shot. We'll just send it to the effects guys to digitally erase it out.
And there was the CGI snow and the Desolation of Smog in Lake Town. Really bothered me.
What about the CGI fire in the Desolation of Smog? That was good. Stop!
No, it wasn't.
Well, now you know.
Again, you aren't a big mega budget production. It's not like I was watching that. You're not a Jason Statham.
I want to be so bad.
Okay, anything for Sci-Fi Guy or for the group?
This guy's been trying to ask a question real hard.
I want to ask a question. I said, I did like a, video or
after you've put it forward? No, I've either liked the movie and still made fun of it or hated it. I don't think I've ever changed my mind. Like I said, no, there's movies that I like that there's a lot of room to make fun of that I do reviews of. And then movies that I genuinely just hate and do a review of, but I don't think I've ever that one has ever won me over midway through. Not yet.
Early last year, when Fast and Furious 6 came out, I was thinking of doing a review of Talk, because I had that for ages. But then I was researching it, and the director was like, yeah, we made the stupidest movie possible, because I hate the Fast and the Furious movies, but the guy who produced the Fast and the Furious movies put me on a movie that's basically the Fast and the Furious with motorcycles. I'm going to make the dumbest movie ever. So basically, Talk is a massive inside joke. Rewatching it with that knowledge, I was like, I can't make fun of it because it knows it's being incredibly dumb. When it puts a giant product placement for Mountain Dew and Pepsi on either side of a fight scene where two girls are duking it out using motorbikes as like weaponry. I think they'll do it because know what they're doing.
I have like the opposite sort of that for a movie that I'm actually filming a review of while I'm here. And that's Myra Breckenridge. Thank you. I started out thinking it was okay. I thought it was ridiculous and terrible, but not too, offensively horrible. But then I listened to the director's commentary, and right now I want the director to die in a fire. I actually live tweeted rewatching the commentary.
I cannot wait to see that.
I watch stuff I like all the time because my show's essentially a riff show. It's a riff show done by a really snooty, pretentious character, and it's kind of written jokingly from that point of view. But there was one where I remember not liking it when I was a lot younger, and then I did it again for the show. It was the Andy Kaufman movie Heartbeats, and I watched it again and was like, wow, I actually find this really charming. I was like, this kind of plays with a lot of different cliches of romantic films, but it does it with robots, and their sidekick is literally named Comic Relief Bot, and it's just so I'm enjoying the hell out of this. So off the top of my head, that one.
I'm so glad this is on tape. I don't know what was wrong with me when I reviewed Rango negatively. Do you remember that that's a thing that exists? It's an animated movie. Johnny Depp is a gecko. It's like a western. It's like the last remotely decent thing he did.
Shots fired.
And that movie when I first reviewed it, and I watched it again like a year later and said, "What the fuck was wrong with me? This is funny."
I've done it with film, I have done it with TV. I did the first season of American Horror Story, which I hated, and I loved the second season. I'm pretty into the third season too, so I guess it's different though because it's a medium that's ongoing, it's not done necessarily when you review it.
That's strange, your review of that got me into that show.
Really?
I guess where it comes from is there's not been one that's won me over because it's all a matter of the intent with the review. I mean, doing it for entertainment, okay, and I did that with Doctor Who reviews because you go into you're looking for something to tear apart. But the series I'm doing now, I'm not looking to be won over. I'm not looking to hate it. It's just I let the movie do what it is, and then I try to build from there. If it's a bad one, I've got to call it a bad one. If it's a good one, I got to call it a good one. But you got to find an angle to work with from there. You can't go at it going, okay, this is terrible. But it's all the intent of what you're doing with the show is what leads to that.
Anything else for Sci-Fi Guy or for the group?
Okay.
Which sci-fi movie are you really looking forward to seeing in the future?
Looking forward to?
In the
I just saw the trailer for both yesterday. I'm actually a little intrigued by that one. There was one more movie coming out this summer, and I'm blanking on the title. Well, morbid curiosity. Maybe it's tomorrow. Yeah, that looks interesting, yeah.
Anyone for Neil Thomas or the group?
Alright. So, sorry, another one for the group. Do any of y'all ever like look back at your old reviews, and if so, in what context?
Oh, shame.
Was this shot at the bottom of the well?
Yes.
Well, I was drunk. I genuinely hate my first episode because this was coming off. The first episode of Renegade Cut was like right after I stopped doing hard gaming, and I had that sort of let's make jokes a little mindset. And it's the only episode of Renegade Cut where I actually attempted to be mildly humorous, and I just hate it so much for that reason. I wish I could just redo that episode and take out all of the jokes, whether they worked or not.
Most of the time when I rewatch old episodes, it's just to remind myself that I can actually complete something. I can actually, usually like while I'm editing, I'll just watch an old episode to remind myself, like, okay, this is my style, I can actually complete something and export it, because it's just, editing is a very long process, and it's very demoralizing. You have to watch yourself over. So it's usually just to remind myself that I can actually.
You know, my very first one, it was awful, and not just because I hadn't gotten my style in yet, because I was working from a webcam, and my editing software was Camtasia, which is not intended to be used for video. It was just cobbled together. But what I actually managed to do was going back to those, I thought like, okay, I made all these screw-ups. Let me do a little commentary and tell everybody, here's all the shit I did wrong. Don't do this. So I actually tried to turn around making something useful out of it.
I could never do a commentary on an old episode. That means I'd have to watch it. I don't rewatch, with the exception of like a lot of the midnight screenings. I don't really rewatch a lot of my stuff, but definitely not my older stuff. I don't. I wouldn't even do like a remake or a redo of it, because I'd be terrified that people would watch the original out of curiosity.
My older stuff, some of you fans of that, though, there are some that I use kind of embarrassment, just a little bit, especially some of the really, really early stuff where I was very green. I was still editing in Windows Movie Maker. No, really, and I was doing that for longer than you might expect.
We were teasing about it for a while.
Yeah, you might notice the immediate jump in quality once I moved to Vegas. Surprise! And once I decided to move to HD video, you will notice that all the changes come about 3 months after I bought the software and I'm terrified of being using it, and then I'll ask myself, oh, why didn't you use it in the first place, you silly git?
I occasionally go back, and while my equipment and my performance, like my actual deliveries and my editing has improved greatly, I still generally think that like the script was like I think that the jokes are fine, usually still hold up. Like the material's there, but I've definitely just as a reminder of yes, I've come a long way and still have room to grow.
I pretty much, if I look back at my stuff, I have a memory like a sieve, so it's like watching it sort of like with a clean pair of eyes. So I'm really surprised with what parts of it work, what don't work. Any stuff that I feel don't work, it's just generally looking for the episode left over from when I edited it. But it's usually okay-ish. I'm going to have to rewatch Left Behind because, not because of the sequels, but because of the Nicolas Cage remakes. I'm going to remake my episode.
Sweet.
You didn't hear that he was starring in the
No, I meant you're going to remake the episode with Nicolas Cage.
As a beginning.
Masochism. One more answer to that.
Me? Sorry.
Mr. Banks has come out, and this is to Leon. When the film comes out on DVD, are you going to analyze how trying to actually get the rights to Mary Poppins was very difficult during that time frame, and how are you going to compare between what the movie shows and what history shows?
Well, I actually haven't seen that film just yet, but as I understand it, well, I mean, I don't think it's a big secret that the Disney-fied version of this Disney film takes us into Disney's history, especially in the portrayal of Walt Disney himself. I might do it for that reason, although it may come out sort of finger-wagging in some ways. I try to be sort of unemotional in my videos, but it's definitely something I might do.
Because I have seen Saving Mr. Banks. I did a video on it. I would say that as you said, it's a Disney-fied version about the production of a Disney movie, and then people are complaining about the fact that it's Disney-fied. It's like, no shit show. But when it was opened in America, there was a couple of some really snooty articles. Like, E.L. Travers was a feminist role model. And Walt Disney was evil, he was Hitler. Wow, that doesn't seem like it's deliberate assassination for the prestige award season at all. Really, the movie's fine, it's okay, it's a likable enough movie, but even as you're watching it, you know it's a sweetened version of events. But if you can get past that, it's okay. And to be honest, when I was doing my research on it, it was faithful to a point. That's the thing about it. It's faithful to a point, but always to an extent. I mean, I'm surprised at some of the stuff that you get away with showing in the movie, because Walt Disney actually does smoke, he does drink in that movie, and he gets pissed off at one point. He's not entirely benevolent. He gets pissed off at several points in that movie and slams down the phone on P.L. Travers, which you wouldn't expect in a completely Disney-fied movie. So I don't think all the edges have been taken off, just most of them.
Way nicer to her than they were to Walt Disney in terms of making the characters more palatable to audiences. Because it's like, okay, it's Tom Hanks, Walt Disney, he's maybe a little less of a curmudgeon than he was in real life. Whereas Emma Thompson's Pamela Travers is a charming British eccentric, and in real life she was a fucking lunatic.
They give her the backstory.
Yeah.
In front.
Can I ask this question for a specific few people?
Okay.
For Kyle, Diamanda, and Brad, given the subject matter of the material you reviewed, what has been the most awkward script you've ever had?
Awkward. You guys want to start?
I'm awkward.
I mean, were we awkward?
I don't know if I've ever really been awkward. It's just stuff that I've been used to watching for the past 30 years.
This is a man who walked naked on his porch.
I do that every morning. That's how I wake up. That's how I wake my neighbors up, too. I mean, there's been scripts that I've been proud of. There's been scripts I haven't, but in terms of being awkward, no, not really.
I got two I can think of. One of them is the one that I had to pull from Blit because they were angry. And that was Forgive Me for Raping You, about just 4 short films about Catholic priests raping women and murdering them. And I had to abandon my usual, chronological reviews for that one to a certain extent because he pretty much does the same thing over and over and over again. And it was a little bit annoying. Worse for the woman. Thanks for Brad for appearing for that one, it's H.E. Stan. The other one was, it's not up on TikTok yet, it's Where the Dead Could Die. And that one was the most soul-destroying experience I've ever had trying to make something funny. And I should have stopped after 40 minutes rather than stretching to 55. Yeah.
That's a soul-crushing film.
That's horrifying.
That's soul-crushing.
For me, the most awkward ones are the ones that are no longer online. for reasons that I don't want to repeat. Okay, Hat.
I went to school for film, so I had to counter the bars or shirt outside of your reviews. And I want to know, like, in doing work with that Barcelona, you've learned to despise him as much as I have as a person.
I can't. Partly because I think that his own persona is as much a part of his films as the films are, and partially because I kind of like people with rough edges. I kind of admire him for just being his own awful self. So I cannot hate Lars von Trier, especially because he does know how to go to that dark place in a way that I found meaningful. Like the Melancholy episode I did. It was basically, I agree with his portrayal of depression because it mirrored my own experience so well. And I have to respect him for having the guts to go to that place honestly. The Nazi comments, I'll just say yeah.
Okay. Just clearing my throat about it.
He is my favorite awful human being.
This is just for FilmBrain. You did Ratatouille. You haven't really done any bad animation films. Are you going to do any more from video or anything like that in the future? Or have I just not been to the site recently and you have done?
For Bad Movie Beatdown, I haven't really focused on it. See, the funny thing about Bad Movie Beatdown and family films and all that, Bad Movie Beatdown generally tends to be stuff that I tend to watch myself. So I don't go out of my way to see a lot of animated family movies and all that. So when I do, it's kind of a rare occasion. That being said, I do have a copy of Food Fight. And it is in the review pile. And if Doug doesn't get to it first, then maybe I might. But yeah, I have reviewed some terrible animated movies on the projector. Top Cat. Seriously, that was one of the worst experiences I've ever had in a cinema. So me and my friend John, my poor uni friend John, who I took to all these movies whilst I was at uni, we're both sat in the cinema. This is one of the last screens of this movie. I had put this off for as long as possible. And we've just both sat in the chairs like this. We just found ourselves slumping continuously. Just the other day, I had to make a choice between whether or not I had to see the Harry Hill movie or Moshi Monsters movie.
He's trying to take me to the Harry Hill movie.
I was joking about that. Turns out because that movie was worse than I was expecting, which is amazing.
Comment on bad animation. Last night, me and my wife watched this awful movie. We got it from Amazon on the watching live thing. And okay, The Silver Circle. It's like the most bad shit, Ron Paul worshipping and terrible animated movie you'll ever see. It's about the power of silver dollars and how they can defeat the government.
Sounds amazing. One more question. You there?
For us aspiring internet reviewers like yourselves, what advice would you give for getting the word out about our own work? For the group.
That's not tricky because we have a website.
Make friends with other reviewers who are bigger or smaller or the same sort of level as you, because for a big chunk of time they're going to be your biggest single audience. Make friends with them.
I got to where I am by knowing Rob Walker. Don't do that.
Plagiarize Daniel Plow and then skywrite about it.
Well, I keep at it because I was doing stuff online for 10 years before I got to panels and being recognized and all stuff. It's the opportunities, things change online so fast these days. Things like Patreon just opened up, and Kickstarter didn't exist. The whole idea of it was just alien 2 years ago. Things change. You just have to keep at it.
That's, yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, I think it's just ask. Like, if there's a site you really like that you think might, that you might want your stuff on it, don't be afraid to ask them, because it's kind of surprising how many people are willing to answer.
If you don't ask, the answer is always no.
See? Okay, because that's 2 each, we'll just open it up for questions for anyone or for the whole group. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Never mind.
Tom says we're now have to go, so you can kill him if you want.